It only takes a second. The cold doesn't kill you right away. They don't tell you that. It kills you bit by bit. First, your fingers stop working. Then your toes go numb. Your mind starts playing tricks on you. You see things that aren't there. You hear noises in the wind. And if you're unlucky enough, desperate enough to search for shelter in the wrong place, you might find something worse than freezing to death. If you're ready, subscribe to the Delta War Stories channel and like the video. It only takes a second. Let's get started. My name is Robert Mitchell Hayes, Staff Sergeant, United States Marine Corps, 1st Marine Division. I was 20 years old when I led 14 men into the Chosin Mountains in December 1950. I'm 85 now, and I'm one of 3 who walked out of that mountain. This is the story of Operation Frozen Tomb, the mission that never officially happened, the mission that proved there are things worse than war, worse than cold, worse than death itself. Korea, winter of 1950. The war that was supposed to be over by Christmas had turned into a frozen nightmare. Chinese forces had crossed the Yalu River in overwhelming numbers, surrounding UN forces at the Chosin Reservoir. The temperature had dropped to 40 below zero. Men were freezing to death in their foxholes. Weapons stopped working. Blood froze before it hit the ground. And we were ordered to fight our way south through 78 miles of Chinese positions with over 100,000 enemy troops between us and safety. They called it a retreat. We called it survival. The chosen few, they named us later. 15,000 Marines and soldiers who fought through hell frozen over. But what they don't talk about, what got buried in classified files and whispered conversations, was what happened to some of the units that got separated during that retreat. Units that disappeared into the mountains and were never seen again. Units like mine. December 6, 1950. My platoon, 43 Marines, was tasked with covering a withdrawal route on the eastern edge of the Chosin Reservoir. Standard rearguard action. Hold the position until the main force passes, then pull back and follow. Simple on paper. Impossible in reality. The Chinese hit us at 0400 hours. Not a probe, not a skirmish, a full assault. Hundreds of them, maybe thousands, human waves tactics, blowing bugles and screaming as they charged through the darkness. We held for 6 hours. Held while the temperature dropped and our ammunition froze and men's fingers stuck to metal so hard that pulling the trigger tore skin. By 1,000 hours, we'd been overrun. The position was lost. Of 43 Marines, only 15 were still mobile. The rest were dead, wounded too badly to move, or so hypothermic they couldn't stand. Lieutenant Jackson, our platoon leader, made the call. "We move north," he said, voice steady despite the chaos. "Into the mountains. Find shelter. Regroup. Then we make our way south when the Chinese move past." It was suicide. Everyone knew it. North meant deeper into enemy territory. North meant higher elevation. North meant colder. But south meant running directly into the Chinese assault, and we didn't have the ammunition or the numbers for that fight. "Sergeant Hayes," Jackson looked at me. "Get them moving. We've got maybe an hour before we're too cold to function." I gathered the 15. Young faces, most of them barely old enough to vote. Corporal David Chen, Chinese-American kid from Los Angeles who spoke Mandarin and had been invaluable for intelligence work. Private First Class Marcus Johnson, a big kid from Texas who'd been our automatic rifleman until his bar froze solid. Private James Sullivan, Boston Irish, always had a joke even when things were at their worst. Then there were the others, Rodriguez, Miller, O'Brien, Kowalski, Williams, Patterson, Harper, Reeves, Mitchell, and Walsh. We moved north, following a ravine that provided some cover from the wind. The cold was beyond anything I'd experienced. Each breath felt like inhaling broken glass. Exposed skin froze in seconds. We'd lost our heavy packs during the firefight, which meant no sleeping bags, minimal rations, and ammunition that was running dangerously low. After 2 hours, Lieutenant Jackson collapsed. Hypothermia. His lips were blue, his speech slurred, and his eyes had that 1,000-yard stare that meant his core temperature had dropped too far. We tried to warm him, but without fire, without shelter, there was nothing we could do. He died 20 minutes later, frozen solid while still technically alive. "Hayes," he'd whispered before the end. Get them home." I was in command now. 15 men, no, 14 men and me. Lost in enemy territory. Temperature dropping. No support. No rescue. No hope. "Keep moving," I ordered. "We find shelter or we die. Those are the options." We climbed. Higher into the mountains where the wind cut like razors and the snow was deep enough to swallow a man. Rodriguez went down next. Frostbite had turned his feet black. He couldn't walk. We carried him for an hour before he begged us to leave him. "I'm dead weight," he gasped. "You know it. I know it. Leave me." I wanted to argue. Wanted to say we never leave a Marine behind. But he was right. Carrying him was killing us all. "I'm sorry," I said. He nodded. "Make it count, Sergeant. Whatever you do next, make it count." We left him there, propped against a rock with his rifle and our last morphine syringe. The Chinese would find him, or the cold would take him. Either way, he'd bought us time and weight we desperately needed. 13 of us now, moving through twilight in terrain that wanted us dead. And that's when Chun spotted it. "Sergeant," he pointed. "Up there. Structure. Man-made." I followed his finger. There, carved into the mountain face about half a click ahead, was an entrance. Not a cave. Too regular. Too deliberate. A tunnel opening, reinforced with timber and what looked like concrete. "Japanese," Chun said. "Look at the construction style. This is Imperial Japanese engineering. Probably from when they occupied Korea." Hope surged through me. Japanese occupation meant potential supplies, shelter, maybe even weapons. The Japanese had been here from 1910 to 1945. 40 years to build infrastructure, including defensive positions and storage facilities throughout Korea. Could be occupied, Sullivan warned. Chinese, North Korean holdouts, anything. Could be our only chance at survival, I countered. "We check it out. Chen, you're with me. Everyone else, defensive perimeter. 5 minutes. If we're not back, you move on." Chen and I approached the entrance carefully. The tunnel was maybe 8 feet high and 6 feet wide, descending at a gentle angle into the mountain. The timber supports were old but solid, and there were markings. Japanese characters that Chen translated. "Research Station 7, he read. "Imperial Japanese Army. 1943, authorized personnel only." He paused, face troubled. "There's another character here. Old style. It means sealed or forbidden. This place was restricted even among Japanese forces." "Supplies?" I asked. "Probably. But Sarge, why would they seal it? Why mark it forbidden?" "Because they lost the war and abandoned it," I said, not believing my own words. "We need shelter. We need it now. Call the others." The 13 of us entered the tunnel. The temperature inside was maybe 10 degrees warmer than outside. Not warm, but compared to 40 below, it felt like heaven. We moved carefully, weapons ready, flashlights cutting through the darkness. The tunnel descended for maybe 200 meters before opening into a chamber. And that's when we knew this wasn't just a storage facility. The chamber was huge, easily 50 feet across with a vaulted ceiling. But it wasn't natural. Every surface had been worked, reinforced, covered in both Japanese construction and something older. Much older. The walls showed layers. Modern concrete over Japanese timber over ancient stone. And carved into that ancient stone were symbols. Korean Hangul, but archaic, styles that predated modern writing by centuries. "What is this place?" Sullivan breathed. Chun moved closer to the walls, examining the symbols. These are shamanic wards, protection symbols. The kind Korean mudang, spiritual shamans, would use to seal away evil spirits. He turned to me, face pale. Sarge, the Japanese didn't build this place. They found it. They built around something that was already here. In the center of the chamber stood a structure that made my skin crawl. A stone sarcophagus, maybe 8 feet long and 4 feet wide, covered in chains. Not modern chains. Ancient iron, thick as a man's wrist, wrapped around the sarcophagus dozens of times. And welded to those chains were newer additions. Japanese steel, industrial-grade locks, and metal plates with warnings in Japanese, Korean, and weirdly, English. Danger, do not open, by order of Imperial Command, Unit 731. Unit 731. I'd heard rumors during intelligence briefings. Japanese Biological Warfare Division. Human experiments. Atrocities that made the Nazis look tame. What the hell were they doing here? We should leave, O'Brien said quietly. Right now. This place feels wrong. He was right. The chamber had an atmosphere, a pressure that made breathing difficult. And there was a smell, faint but distinct. Old death mixed with something else. Something chemical and wrong. But it was 40 below outside. We had 13 hypothermic Marines, and night was falling. We needed shelter. We make camp here, I decided. Avoid the sarcophagus. Don't touch anything. We warm up, eat what rations we have, and move out at first light. We set up in a corner far from the sarcophagus. No fire, we couldn't risk the smoke, but we could huddle together for warmth and wrap ourselves in whatever material we found. The chamber had other rooms branching off. Supply rooms with some preserved food, medical supplies, and blessedly, blankets. Japanese military issue, moth-eaten but functional. We also found documents. Chen and I examined them while the others tried to rest. Research logs, Chen translated. Imperial Japanese Army, Unit 731 Subsection. December 1943. They found this place during occupation. Local records indicated a burial site sealed by Korean shamans in. He squinted at the faded text, 953 AD. Almost 1,000 years ago. What's buried? They don't say exactly. The logs reference a Gwishin. That's a Korean term for vengeful spirit, but powerful, more than ghost. The shamans of the Goryeo dynasty sealed it here after it killed hundreds. The Japanese scientists wanted to study it, weaponize it maybe. Did they open it? Chin flipped pages, his face growing paler. Yes. January 1944. They opened the sarcophagus. The logs end 3 days later. Final entry just says, God forgive us. It won't stop feeding. That was 7 years ago, I said. If they opened it and something happened, it's long dead by now. Maybe, Chin said. But he didn't sound convinced. We tried to sleep in shifts. 3 men on watch while the others rested. But rest was impossible. The chamber was too quiet. Outside, the wind howled through the mountain passes, but inside, there was nothing. Just silence. The kind of silence that makes you hear your own heartbeat. Makes you imagine sounds that aren't there. At 0200 hours, Sullivan shook me awake. Sergeant, we've got a problem. I followed him to the sarcophagus. The others were already there, staring. The chains had frost on them. Thick white frost despite the relatively warm temperature inside the chamber. And the frost was moving. Slowly creeping along the metal like living ice. It wasn't like this an hour ago, Sullivan said. It started maybe 20 minutes back. Growing. Spreading. I touched the frost. It was cold. Colder than anything had a right to be. Colder than the air outside. My fingertip stuck to it, and when I pulled away, skin tore. Back away, I ordered. Everyone back. Now. A sound came from inside the sarcophagus. Faint. A scratch, like fingernails on stone. Then another sound. Breathing. Slow and labored. Something was inside that sealed stone box. And it was waking up. "Weapons up," I whispered. "Safety's off. If that thing opens, we light it up." 13 rifles aimed at the sarcophagus. 13 Marines who'd survived Chinese human wave assaults and 40 below temperatures, now facing something we couldn't understand. The scratching continued. Rhythmic. Deliberate. Like whatever was inside was testing the stone, probing for weakness. The frost spread faster now, climbing the chains, reaching toward the ceiling. Where it touched the ancient Korean symbols carved into the walls, they began to glow. Faint at first, then brighter. A sickly green luminescence that cast twisted shadows across the chamber. The wards, Chen breathed. The shamanic seals. They're activating. Responding to whatever's inside. Is that good or bad? If they're activating after 1,000 years, it means they're still needed. Still holding something back. The scratching stopped. Silence. Complete and absolute. We waited, weapons trained, breathing shallow. Seconds stretched into minutes. Nothing. Just that awful silence and the green glow from the symbols. Maybe it went back to sleep, Miller suggested hopefully. Then the sarcophagus moved. Not much. Just a shift. The stone lid sliding maybe an inch. But that 1 inch released something into the air. A smell that made the earlier chemical stench seem pleasant. Decay. Ancient putrefaction. And underneath, something worse. Something that made your hindbrain scream warnings about predators and death. The temperature in the chamber plummeted. Our breath became visible fog. The frost on the chains thickened, spread to the walls, the ceiling. Ice began forming on our uniforms, our weapons. This wasn't natural cold. This was something else. Something that stole heat like a living thing feeding. "Fall back," I ordered. To the entrance tunnel. Defensive positions. We retreated in good order, keeping weapons aimed at the sarcophagus. As we moved, I saw it. The chains were cracking. The ancient iron couldn't take the temperature stress. Fractures appeared, spreading through metal that had held for centuries. The Japanese steel locks were doing better, but they were fighting a losing battle against cold that defied physics. We just reached the tunnel entrance when the first chain snapped. The sound echoed through the chamber like a gunshot. Then another. Another. The locks held for maybe 30 seconds longer before they too failed, metal shattering like glass. The sarcophagus lid slid aside. Slowly. Deliberately. And something sat up. At first, I thought it was human. The shape was right. Head, torso, arms. But as it emerged fully from the stone box, I realized how wrong that first impression had been. It wore robes, ancient Korean burial clothes, but they hung on a frame that was too thin, too tall. The skin, what I could see of it, was gray-white like old parchment, stretched tight over bones that seemed wrong. Too many joints in the fingers. Too many vertebrae in the neck. But the face. God, the face. It had been human once. Female, maybe. But whatever had been done to her, whatever ritual or curse had created this thing, had changed her into something else. The eyes were completely white, no pupils, no iris, just blank orbs that somehow still saw. The mouth opened too wide, revealing teeth that had been filed to points. She turned her head toward us with mechanical precision. That lipless mouth opened wider. And she screamed. It wasn't sound. Not really. It was something else. A frequency that bypassed your ears and went straight to your soul. Every man in that tunnel dropped to his knees. Our weapons clattered to the ground. Blood poured from our noses. I felt my mind trying to shut down, to escape the assault. Through the pain and the blood, I saw her move. Not walking. Gliding. Her feet didn't touch the ground. She floated toward us, robes trailing behind, one skeletal hand reaching out. The temperature dropped even further. Frost formed on the tunnel walls, on our skin. Shoot her. I tried to scream, but it came out as a whisper. Shoot. Johnson, tough bastard from Texas, managed to raise his rifle. He fired. The shot was perfect, center mass. I saw the bullet hit. Saw her robes tear. Saw nothing. No blood. No wound. The bullet passed through her like she was smoke. She reached Johnson. Her hand touched his face. Gently. Almost lovingly. And he started to scream. Not the silent, psychic assault she'd hit us with. Real screaming. The kind that tears vocal cords. His skin where she touched began to gray, to wither. The flesh dried out, mummified in seconds. The effect spread from the point of contact. Face, neck, torso. In less than 10 seconds, Johnson had been reduced to a dried husk still wearing a Marine uniform. She released him. His body collapsed, and she moved to the next man. O'Brien. He tried to run. She caught him anyway. The wards. Chen screamed. The symbols. They hurt her before. I looked at the chamber walls. The Korean symbols still glowed green, but she'd moved past them. Moved into the tunnel where there were no protective seals. But Chen was right. In the chamber, the wards had contained her for a millennium. Maybe they could hurt her. Back into the chamber. I ordered. Use the symbols. Stay near the walls. We scrambled backward, dragging our dead, leaving O'Brien's mummified corpse behind. The thing that had been a Korean shaman followed slowly. She wasn't rushing. She didn't need to. We were trapped. Where could we go? Outside was 40 below and Chinese forces. Inside was her. In the chamber, near the glowing symbols, she hesitated. The green light seemed to repel her, creating a barrier she couldn't easily cross. She circled, staying in the center of the room, those white eyes fixed on us with terrible intelligence. She's trapped, Sullivan gasped. The wards are holding her. For now, Chin said. But look, the glow is fading. Whatever power they have, it's not infinite. When they die completely, she'll be free. I looked at the symbols. He was right. The luminescence was dimmer than before. Flickering. We had time, but not much. The Japanese, I said. They survived for 3 days after opening the sarcophagus. How? What did they know? Chin pulled out the research documents we'd found. He scanned them frantically, looking for anything useful. Here, a partial entry. Subject exhibits extreme vulnerability to. The rest is damaged. Water? Fire? I can't read it. Trial and error then, I said. Miller, your lighter. Still have it? He nodded, pulling out a battered Zippo. I took it, lit it, and threw it toward the entity. It passed through her harmlessly. Not fire. Water? Sullivan suggested. Snow outside. We could. We try that, we expose ourselves to her, I said. And we've already seen bullets don't work. What else? Kowalski, who'd been quiet this whole time, spoke up. Sarge, those chains on the sarcophagus. Iron. Old iron. My grandmother was Irish. She always said iron hurts spirits. Keeps fairies away. Old world superstition. Superstition is all we have, I said. Chen, the research logs. Any mention of iron? He flipped pages. Yes. Here. Subject shows adverse reaction to ferrous metals, especially materials associated with violence or death. Weapons. Chains. Blood iron. He looked up. The Japanese knew. That's why they wrapped the sarcophagus in iron chains. Not to lock her in. To contain her power. The chains are broken, Williams pointed out. All over the floor. I looked. He was right. Shattered chains lay scattered around the open sarcophagus. Heavy links of ancient iron. I grabbed one, weighing it in my hand. Maybe 5 pounds. Good heft. And when I held it, The entity reacted. She recoiled slightly, those white eyes focusing on the metal. It works, I said. She doesn't like it. Everyone, grab chains. Wrap them around your weapons, your gear, yourself if you can. Iron is our only advantage. We moved quickly, gathering the broken chains, winding them around rifle barrels, pistol grips, our own bodies like primitive armor. The entity watched, floating in the center of the chamber, occasionally testing the barrier of the glowing symbols. Each time, green light flared and she pulled back. But each time, the light grew dimmer. "We can't stay here," Patterson said. "When those symbols die, she'll kill us all." "The other rooms," I said. Chen and I found supplies. Maybe the Japanese left more than food and blankets. Maybe they left weapons. Research equipment. Something we can use. "I'll go," Harper volunteered. "I'm fastest." "Take Chen," I ordered. "He can read the labels. Find anything that mentions the entity, the research, or iron. You've got 5 minutes." They disappeared into the side passages while the rest of us maintained defensive positions. The entity continued her slow patrol, testing the weakening wards. I could hear her breathing. Slow, raspy, like air through a corpse's lungs. And underneath, a sound like wind chimes. Delicate. Beautiful. Wrong. "Sarge," Walsh said quietly. "Johnson and O'Brien. What do we tell their families?" "We tell them they died heroes," I said. "Fighting an enemy. Protecting their brothers. The truth. The truth is we're trapped in a mountain with a 1,000-year-old ghost who's picking us off one by one. That's not the truth they need to hear." Harper and Chen returned carrying boxes. Japanese military crates with Unit 731 markings. They dumped the contents on the floor. Documents, photographs, equipment, and weapons. Strange weapons. Not guns. Something else. Chen sorted through the documents rapidly. The Japanese spent 2 years studying her. They couldn't kill her. Couldn't contain her once she was awake. But they learned things. She feeds on life energy. The warmth. The vitality. That's why Johnson and O'Brien dried out. She literally drained them. How do we stop her? You don't. According to this, the original Korean shamans didn't kill her. They couldn't. She was one of them once. A Mudong who performed a forbidden ritual to gain immortality. It worked, but the cost was her humanity. Her sisters couldn't kill her, so they sealed her instead. The sarcophagus. Not just that. The whole chamber is a prison. A spiritual trap. The symbols, the location, even the cold. Everything was designed to keep her weak, dormant. The Japanese disrupted that when they built around it. Added their own reinforcements, but they didn't understand the original magic. When they opened the sarcophagus, they broke the seal. So we put her back. How? Sullivan demanded. We can't touch her without dying. We can't force her into the sarcophagus. We're Marines, not shamans. The Japanese had a plan, Jin said, pulling out a schematic. They built a secondary containment system. Here, in the lower levels. A chamber designed to trap her using electricity and iron. They never got to use it before whatever happened to them. Lower levels, I repeated. Below us? Yes. Accessible through that passage. He pointed to a tunnel entrance we hadn't explored. The equipment is down there. A generator, iron mesh cages, high-voltage power lines. Crude by modern standards, but based on the shamanic principles of binding. So our plan is to lure an immortal death spirit into a 70-year-old Japanese trap that may or may not work. You have a better idea, Sarge? I didn't. The symbols were nearly dark now, flickering weakly. We had maybe minutes before the entity was free to move throughout the chamber. When that happened, we'd all end up like Johnson and O'Brien. We do it, I decided. But we need bait. Something to draw her down there. She feeds on life energy. Jin said. The strongest concentrations would be living people, I finished. She wants us, so we give her a chase. Harper, you're still fastest. Yes, Sergeant. You and Williams. You're going to run down that tunnel to the lower chamber. Chin goes with you. He activates whatever equipment the Japanese left. The rest of us will engage her here. Draw her attention. When you're ready, you signal, and we'll lead her right to you. That's suicide, Williams said. Leading her through narrow tunnels. She'll pick us off one by one. Probably, I agreed. But it's the only play we have. Mitchell, you got those flares in your pack. He nodded, pulling out 2 marine signal flares. Red phosphorus. They'd burn hot and bright for about 2 minutes each. Good. We use these to slow her down. Iron weapons as backup. Keep moving. Stay ahead of her. Don't let her touch you. I looked around at the remaining 10 Marines. Young faces. Scared faces. But determined. We knew the odds coming to Korea. Knew most of us wouldn't make it home. This mission isn't any different. We complete the objective or we die trying. Semper Fi. Semper Fi, they echoed. Some strong, some wavering, but all committed. Harper, Williams, and Chin moved to the tunnel entrance. I gave them a 60-second head start. Then I turned to face the entity. The last symbol had just flickered out. The green glow died. And she smiled. Actually smiled with that too wide mouth full of filed teeth. Now! I screamed. Mitchell lit the first flare. The red light blazed, so bright after the darkness that we all flinched. He threw it at the entity. The flare hit her, and for the first time, she reacted with something like pain. The phosphorus burned through her ethereal form. She shrieked, that psychic assault that made our ears bleed, but she also retreated. Move! 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 We ran for the tunnel entrance. The entity recovered quickly, but the flare had bought us precious seconds. We plunged into the darkness, using flashlights to navigate. Behind us, I could hear her coming. That wind chime sound growing louder. The temperature dropping. The tunnel descended steeply. Rough-hewn rock gave way to more Japanese construction. Concrete. Metal rails for equipment carts. We were in the research facility proper now. Side passages branched off, but we stayed on the main path. Had to trust that Harper and Chen had gone this way. Kowalski screamed. I turned to see him at the back of our formation, the entity's hand on his shoulder. His skin was already graying, withering. He managed one more scream before collapsing. Keep moving, I ordered. Don't stop. We ran harder. Walsh went down next. Not to the entity. He slipped on frost-covered concrete, fell, broke his leg. Before we could help him, she was on him. Another Marine reduced to a dried husk. 8 of us left. The tunnel opened into a large chamber. Industrial. The Japanese had built something here. A laboratory, maybe. Equipment lined the walls. Strange devices. Electrical apparatus. And in the center, a cage. 10 feet by 10 feet. Made entirely of iron mesh wired to a massive generator. Harper was there, frantically working the controls. The generator's dead. It's been sitting here for 7 years. The fuel's degraded. It won't start. Chun! I shouted. Options. Chen was examining the electrical system. We don't need the generator. We need power. Any power source. Enough to electrify the cage. We're in a mountain in North Korea, Sullivan said. Where are we going to find power? I looked at our gear. Standard Marine loadout. Weapons. Ammunition. Radios. Radios that still had batteries. Batteries that held charge. Not much. But maybe enough. Strip the radios, I ordered. All of them. Pull the batteries. Chen, can you wire them into the system? Maybe. If we connect them in series, if the insulation holds, if the cage structure is sound. That's a lot of ifs. Do it. We worked frantically. The entity entered the chamber behind us. She'd slowed down, was savoring the hunt now. Knew we were trapped. Patterson and Reeves positioned themselves between her and Chen, iron chains wrapped around their fists like brass knuckles. The entity glided toward them. Patterson swung first. His chain-wrapped fist connected with her face. She recoiled, shrieking. Iron hurt her. Not much, but enough. Reeves followed up with his own attack. Together, they drove her back, buying Chen time. But she learned quickly. The third time Patterson swung, she caught his wrist. Her fingers closed around flesh, and he started screaming. Reeves tried to pull him free. She grabbed him too. Within seconds, both Marines were desiccated corpses. 6 of us left. Chen was still working, connecting wires with shaking hands. Sullivan and Mitchell lit the second flare, through it. The entity shrieked again, but she was getting used to the pain. The phosphorus slowed her, but didn't stop her. Chen! I screamed. How long? 30 seconds. Maybe less. I need to test the circuit. No time for tests. Do it now. He twisted the last wire connection. Immediately, sparks flew. The iron mesh cage blazed with blue-white electrical discharge. Not strong. Not the high voltage the Japanese had intended. But visible. Active. Enough? Everyone inside the cage. I ordered. Now. We squeezed through the cage door. The electrical discharge crackled around us. Uncomfortable but not deadly. The entity approached the cage. Reached out toward the iron mesh. Her fingers touched it and recoiled instantly. Smoke rose from the contact point. She shrieked, backing away. It's working, Harper breathed. The iron and electricity. She can't pass through. We're trapped, Sullivan countered. She can't get in, but we can't get out. And how long will those radio batteries last? An hour? 2? He was right. We bought time, but we hadn't solved the problem. We were in a cage in a Japanese laboratory in a Korean mountain in the middle of winter with Chinese forces everywhere. Even if the entity gave up and left, which she showed no signs of doing, we'd still freeze or starve eventually. The entity circled the cage. Testing. Probing. Looking for weakness. And then she did something unexpected. She spoke. Not in Korean. Not in Japanese. In English. Broken, heavily accented, but understandable. Soldiers, she said. You fight well. But you cannot win. I am eternal. I have waited 1,000 years. Can wait 1,000 more. You will grow weak. Hungry. Then I will feed. She's right, Mitchell whispered. We're dead. Just slowly. Maybe, I said. But we're not dead yet. Chen, those Japanese documents. You said the original shaman sealed her. How? What was the exact method? Chen pulled out the papers, scanning them by flashlight. Blood ritual. They used their own blood to bind her. 13 shamans, 1 for each moon of the year. They bled themselves onto the chamber stones, spoke binding words, then sealed her in the sarcophagus. The ritual required sacrifice. Life energy to counter her stolen immortality. I looked around the cage. 6 Marines. 6 potential sacrifices. Not 13, but maybe enough. We had blood. We had iron. We had determination. Can we recreate the ritual? Chen stared at me. Sarge, we don't know the words. We don't know the exact procedure. And it requires death. Real death. The shamans died completing the seal. We're dead anyway, I said. This way, maybe we take her with us. Maybe we finish what those Korean shamans started. Seal her properly so she never escapes again. Sullivan laughed. Not happily. You're insane. You're talking about human sacrifice. I'm talking about completing the mission, I said. Our mission was to survive. To get home. That's impossible now. So we change the mission. We make sure this thing doesn't follow us out, doesn't escape to kill anyone else. We end it here. How? Harper asked. The sarcophagus. It's still up there in the main chamber. Still has the shamanic seals carved into it. If we can get her back inside, seal it with our blood and these iron chains, maybe it'll hold. Maybe it'll be permanent this time. We tried leading her here, Mitchell pointed out. Barely made it. How are we supposed to lead her back up? We've lost half our people already. I looked at the entity. She was still circling, patient, eternal. And I realized something. She wasn't just hunting us. She was studying us, learning. She'd spoken English, which meant she'd absorbed knowledge from someone. The Japanese researchers probably, which meant she could learn tactics, strategy. If we ran again, she'd anticipate, counter. We needed to surprise her. We don't lead her, I said. We trap her, force her. Chen, can the electrical system be reversed? Make the cage repel instead of contain? He thought about it. Maybe. If we flip the polarity, the iron would become a weapon instead of a barrier. But we'd have to be outside the cage when I do it. And the entity will have access to us. I know. Here's what we do. I laid out the plan. It was desperate, probably suicidal, but it was all we had. We'd reverse the cage polarity, turn the iron mesh into a weapon. But someone needed to stay inside to flip the switch while the rest of us lured the entity close. When she was in position, we'd activate the system. The electrical discharge through the iron would hurt her, maybe even incapacitate her temporarily. Then we'd wrap her in the iron chains and drag her back to the sarcophagus. Who stays in the cage? Sullivan asked, though I could see he already knew the answer. Me, Chin said quietly. I understand the electrical system. I can time it right. Chen, I started. No arguments, Sergeant. This is my call. You need to be out there. You're the leader. The others need you. He managed a weak smile. Besides, I'm the smallest. If she gets through, I can dodge longer. It was a lie, and we both knew it. If the entity got through, Chen was dead. But I also knew he was right. Someone had to stay, and it had to be someone who understood the equipment. All right, I said. The rest of us exit the cage. We spread out, make ourselves targets. Draw her attention. When she's close enough, Chin hits the switch. We move fast, wrap her in chains, and drag her back upstairs. Questions. How do we survive touching her? Harper asked. She drains life on contact. The iron chains. We keep them between us and her. And we move fast. Don't give her time to latch on. I looked each man in the eye. Sullivan, Mitchell, Harper, Miller. This is it. This is where we earn the title Marine. Not by winning. By making sure she doesn't. We gathered the broken chains, distributing them among us. Heavy iron links that we could use as weapons, armor, and binding. Chen positioned himself at the electrical controls. I nodded to him. He nodded back. Then we opened the cage door and stepped out. The entity stopped circling immediately. Those white eyes fixed on us with terrible hunger. She'd been patient, but now prey had made themselves vulnerable. She glided forward, hands outstretched. Spread out. I ordered. Make her choose. We split up, putting distance between ourselves and each other. The entity hesitated, analyzing. Then she chose. Miller. He was closest and young, only 19. Probably had the most life energy. She moved toward him with sudden speed. Miller ran. Not away from the cage, but parallel to it. Leading her. She pursued, faster than before, those skeletal hands reaching. He stumbled on loose rock. She was on him in seconds. Now, Chen. Now. Chen threw the switch. The cage erupted with electrical discharge, but this time it wasn't contained. Energy arced outward, conducted through the iron mesh in blinding blue-white bolts. One of those bolts caught the entity square in the back. She shrieked. That psychic assault that made us all drop to our knees, blood pouring from our noses. But the electricity was doing something. Her ethereal form solidified slightly, became more physical, more vulnerable. I could see her actual form beneath the robes. Something that had been human once but was twisted, corrupted by centuries of feeding on life. Chain her. I screamed. While she's solid. We moved together. Sullivan and I hit her first, wrapping chains around her torso. She thrashed, incredibly strong, but the iron burned her where it touched. Harper got chains around her arms. Mitchell around her legs. She was screaming, not psychically now but physically. A sound of rage and pain that echoed through the chamber. Miller, the Marine she'd been attacking, was still alive. Barely. His skin was gray but not fully desiccated. He grabbed a chain with his remaining strength and wrapped it around her neck. Semper Fi, he gasped. Then he collapsed. The entity was bound, wrapped in iron chains that burned and held her. But she was fighting. The solidification effect from the electricity was fading. We had seconds, maybe less. Move, I ordered. Back to the main chamber. Drag her. We hauled her like a prisoner of war. She fought every step, twisting, screaming, trying to break free. The chains held, but I could feel them weakening. The ancient iron wasn't meant for this kind of stress. One link cracked. Then another. Behind us, Chin emerged from the cage. He'd shut down the system, and now he was following with Miller's body draped over his shoulder. Even now, even in this hell, we weren't leaving our dead behind. The tunnel back up was a nightmare. The entity's thrashing made carrying her nearly impossible. Harper lost his grip. She lunged at him, mouth opening too wide. Sullivan drove a chain into her face like a spear. It passed through her teeth, hooking inside her jaw. She couldn't bite down without impaling herself further on the iron. We reached the main chamber. The sarcophagus waited, still open, chains scattered around it. The green symbols on the walls were dark now, powerless. But carved into the sarcophagus itself, deeper symbols remain. Older. More fundamental. These were the original seals, the ones created by 13 dying shamans 1,000 years ago. In. I ordered. Get her in the sarcophagus. We dragged her to the stone box. She fought with supernatural strength, nearly breaking free. Mitchell got his arm too close. She bit him, those filed teeth sinking into flesh. He screamed but didn't let go of his chains. We forced her down, into the sarcophagus, chains wrapping around her and the stone. Chun. I gasped. The ritual. The blood binding. Chin pulled out the Japanese document with shaking hands. It requires sacrifice. Willing sacrifice. Blood on the seals while speaking the words. What words? I don't know. The documents don't have them. The entity was laughing now. Horrible, cackling laughter. You cannot seal what you do not understand. I am eternal. You are temporary. I will feed on all of you. She was right. We didn't know the words. Didn't understand the magic. We were Marines, not shamans. We were trained to fight enemies we could see, understand, kill. Not this. Never this. But I looked at the symbols carved into the sarcophagus, saw the patterns, the shapes, and I remembered something from a briefing months ago. Korean culture, honor, sacrifice, the concept of jong, emotional connection, loyalty, binding oneself to others through shared experience and sacrifice. These shamans hadn't just bled on stone. They'd given themselves to each other, to their purpose, to the future they were protecting. The words didn't matter. The intention did. The sacrifice did. The willingness to die so others could live. I understand, I said quietly. The ritual doesn't need ancient words. It needs meaning. Purpose. Sacrifice. I pulled out my combat knife. We bind her with our blood, with our lives, with our oath as Marines. We seal her not just with iron and magic, but with our commitment to protect those who come after us. Sarge, Sullivan said, that's not enough. The shamans died. All 13 of them. That was the price. Then we pay the price. I drew the knife across my palm. Blood welled up, hot and red. I pressed my hand against the nearest symbol carved into the sarcophagus. I, Robert Mitchell Hayes, United States Marine Corps, bind this entity with my blood. I sacrifice my life to seal this evil. No one else will die by her hand. The symbol blazed to life. Green light, pure and bright. The entity's laughter cut off. She thrashed harder, trying to escape. Do it, I ordered. All of you. Blood on the symbols. Say the words. Mean them. Chen was next. He cut his palm, pressed it to a symbol. I bind this evil with my blood. I sacrifice my life to seal what should never be free. His symbol lit up. Sullivan. Harper. Mitchell, even with his arm mangled from her bite. One by one, they bled onto the symbols, spoke the binding words. And one by one, the ancient seals blazed to life. Green light spread across the sarcophagus, creating a web that wrapped around the entity, pulling her down. She screamed. Not that psychic assault. This was different. This was fear. Real fear. No, you cannot. I am eternal. I am bound, I said, by our blood, by our sacrifice, by the oath we swore to protect those who cannot protect themselves. The light intensified. The entity was pulled deeper into the sarcophagus, the stone lid beginning to slide closed on its own. The iron chains tightened, melded with the seals, became part of the binding. For a moment, her hand reached out, those skeletal fingers grasping desperately at the air. Then the lid slammed shut. The symbols blazed so bright we had to look away. When the light faded, the sarcophagus was sealed. Truly sealed. The chains had merged with the stone, becoming one. The symbols were carved deeper now, glowing with a permanent green luminescence. And over it all, our handprints remained. 6 bloody impressions on ancient stone. A new layer of protection added to the 1,000-year-old binding. Silence. Complete, blessed silence. No breathing. No scratching. No wind chimes. She was contained. Did we do it? Harper whispered. Is she really sealed? Chun examined the sarcophagus carefully, not touching it. Yes, the ritual worked. Our blood combined with the original binding, made it stronger. The entity is trapped. She's not dead, probably can't be killed, but she's bound. And this time, she won't be getting out. I looked at my bleeding palm, felt lightheaded. The blood loss wasn't severe, but combined with exhaustion, cold, and stress, I was approaching my limit. The others weren't in better shape. Mitchell's arm was infected where she'd bitten him. Sullivan had frostbite on 3 fingers. Harper was hypothermic. Miller's body lay in the corner, desiccated and dead. Chen was swaying on his feet, eyes unfocused. We need to move, I said. Get topside. Find friendly forces. Get medical attention. The mission isn't complete until we're home. But as we turned toward the tunnel entrance, a sound froze us in place. Voices, speaking Chinese. And closer, the distinctive sound of rifle bolts being worked. Chinese soldiers, at least a dozen of them, entering the chamber with weapons raised. We'd been so focused on the entity, we hadn't heard them approaching. They must have followed our trail from the firefight earlier. Found the tunnel entrance. Heard the screaming and explosions. The officer in charge, a captain by his insignia, surveyed the chamber. His eyes took in the sarcophagus, the symbols, the scattered equipment, and us. 6 exhausted, bloody Americans. He barked something in Mandarin. Chen translated. He says we're prisoners. We need to drop our weapons and surrender. I looked at our group. We barely had weapons left. Maybe 3 functioning rifles between us and the chains. We were in no condition to fight, but I'd be damned if I'd surrender after everything we'd been through. The Chinese captain spoke again. This time, Chen's translation was different. He says he knows what's in the sarcophagus. His grandmother was Korean. She told stories about the sealed tomb in the Chosin Mountains, the Guishan who fed on soldiers. Chen looked at me, surprised. He's asking if we've resealed it, if the binding holds. I met the captain's eyes. He was older than most Chinese officers I'd seen, maybe 40, experienced. And there was something in his expression, not hostility, wariness, understanding. He'd grown up with the legends, knew what we'd been fighting. Tell him yes, I said. Tell him the entity is sealed. Permanently, by our blood and our sacrifice. Tell him our fight is over. Chen translated. The captain listened, then looked at the sarcophagus. He approached it carefully, examined the glowing symbols, the blood handprints, the merged chains. He touched one symbol lightly. Green light pulsed. He jerked his hand back, nodding slowly. He spoke at length. Chen translated. He says the binding is strong, stronger than before. He says his grandmother would be pleased. The Americans have done what his people could not, protected what needs protecting. Chen paused. He's ordering his men to lower their weapons. The Chinese soldiers obeyed, though several looked confused. Their captain turned back to us and spoke again. He says the war continues above ground, Chen translated. But here, in this place, the real war is over. The eternal enemy is defeated. He will not take prisoners today. He will let us go. Why? Sullivan asked. This doesn't make sense. We're enemies. The captain seemed to understand some English. He spoke directly to me in broken English. Some things bigger than war. Some things more important. You fight for your country. I fight for mine. But here, he gestured at the sarcophagus, here we fight for all people. For all soldiers. For all who come after. You win this fight, you deserve honor. He snapped something to his men. They formed up, preparing to leave. But before he departed, the captain approached me. He removed something from his pocket, a small bronze medallion on a leather cord. He pressed it into my hand. My grandmother's, he said. Protection against spirits. You need more than I. He saluted. A proper military salute. Not mocking. Respectful. Go home, Marine. Tell your story. Make sure no one opens this tomb again. Then he was gone, his soldiers following. We were alone in the chamber with our dead and our exhaustion and the knowledge that we'd just been spared by an enemy who understood what we'd sacrificed. We need to move, I said, while we still can. The journey out of the mountain was a blur. We carried Miller's body, supporting each other through tunnels and back into the killing cold outside. The storm had passed. Dawn was breaking, pale winter light illuminating a landscape of white and death. We found an American patrol 3 hours later. They were part of the general retreat from Chosin. When they saw us, saw our condition, they immediately called for medics. We were evacuated by helicopter, flown to the nearest aid station, and from there to a hospital ship. The debriefing came 3 days later. An intelligence officer asked what happened to our platoon. I told him the truth. We were ambushed, retreated north, found shelter in a cave, fought off Chinese patrols, lost most of our unit. The survivors made it back. He didn't believe the cave part. I could see it in his eyes. But he also didn't push. Too many strange things were happening in Korea. Too many units disappearing. Too many reports of impossible things in the mountains. The war was chaos. My story was filed away with thousands of others. Lieutenant Jackson, Private Rodriguez, Private O'Brien, Corporal Johnson, Private Walsh, Private Kowalski, Private Patterson, Private Reeves, and Private Miller. 9 Marines who never came home. The official record says they died in action during the Chosin Reservoir withdrawal. Killed by enemy fire. It's not technically wrong. They did die in action. Just not against an enemy that officially exists. The remaining 6 of us were reassigned to different units, scattered across the division. Someone in command didn't want us talking to each other, didn't want our stories to line up too closely. I saw Chin once more before he shipped home. He'd been discharged on medical grounds. The frostbite had cost him 3 toes and 2 fingers. "You still have it?" he asked, gesturing to my pocket where I kept the Chinese captain's medallion. "Always," I said. "Reminder." Of what? That some battles aren't about sides, aren't about countries or politics. They're about protecting the future from the past, about making sure some horrors stay buried. "You think the seal will hold?" "It has to," I said. "Because if it doesn't, if that thing gets free again, there won't be anyone who knows how to stop it. We barely did, and we had luck, iron, and the original binding to work with." "Someone should stay," Chin said. "Watch the site. Make sure it's never disturbed." The Chinese captain. His family knows the legends. They'll watch. And if they can't, I touched the medallion. We'll know. Somehow, we'll know. That was 1951. The war ended in 1953. The division between North and South Korea became permanent. The Chosin Reservoir region remained contested, dangerous, off-limits. Perfect conditions for keeping people away from a sealed tomb. I served out my enlistment. Came home. Got married. Had kids. Built a normal life. But the nightmares never stopped. Every winter, when the temperature drops, I remember. Every time I feel that particular kind of cold that goes deeper than skin, I'm back in that mountain. Back in that chamber. Fighting something that shouldn't exist. The other survivors scattered. Sullivan became a police officer in Chicago. Harper taught high school history. Mitchell worked construction. We didn't keep in close contact. Too many memories. Too much trauma. But every December 6th, the anniversary of that night, I'd receive phone calls. Just checking in. Making sure the others were still alive. Still sane. Still remembering. Chen became a professor of East Asian studies. Spent his career researching Korean shamanism, burial practices, and spiritual traditions. His published work never mentioned what we found, but I recognized the references. The patterns. He was documenting the knowledge, making sure future generations would know how to seal what needed sealing. In 2003, Chin called me. His voice was urgent. They found it. North Korean military, excavating in the Chosin region. They found the entrance. What happened? The Chinese stopped them, crossed the border without permission, destroyed the entire site with high explosives, buried it under 1,000 tons of rock. The North Koreans protested, but the Chinese didn't care. They knew. The captain's family kept their promise. They're still watching. The entity? Probably survived the collapse. She survived worse. But she's still sealed. Still trapped. And now she's even deeper. Even more impossible to reach. Good, I said. Let her rot in the dark. But I knew it wasn't over. Could never be over. Because sealed isn't destroyed. Contained isn't eliminated. Somewhere under the Chosin Mountains, wrapped in iron and blood magic and Chinese explosives, she waits. Patient. Eternal. Knowing that seals weaken over time. That explosives settle. That eventually, someone will dig deep enough. We'll find her. And we'll make the mistake of trying to open what 13 Korean shamans and 6 American Marines died to keep closed. This is my testimony. My warning. My memorial to the men who died in that mountain fighting an enemy that wasn't Chinese or North Korean or even human. They died protecting the world from something older than war, older than countries, older than civilization itself. Lieutenant William Jackson, Private Carlos Rodriguez, Private Timothy O'Brien, Corporal Marcus Johnson, Private Robert Walsh, Private Raymond Kowalski, Private Dale Patterson, Private Kenneth Reeves, Private James Miller. They were Marines. They did their duty, and their sacrifice sealed an evil that had terrorized Korea for a millennium. If you're watching this in 2015, if you're military or intelligence or anyone who makes decisions about what gets excavated and where, remember this story. Remember that some places in this world are off limits for reasons that go beyond politics or property lines. The Chosin Mountains are one of those places. The tomb is sealed. It must stay sealed. Chin died last year. Heart attack. Natural causes. Harper died in 2008. Cancer. Mitchell in 2010. Construction accident. Sullivan in 2012. Line of duty. Of the 6 who survived that mountain, only 2 remain. Me and Williams. And we're old now. 80s. Our time is running out. When we're gone, who will remember? Who will know to watch the mountains? Who will stop the next excavation, the next research team, the next fool who thinks sealed tombs are historical curiosities instead of essential prisons? That's why I'm telling this story now. Recording it. Making sure it survives beyond my memory. Because the entity in the tomb is patient. She can wait decades. Centuries. She's already waited 1,000 years. She can wait 1,000 more. But every seal weakens eventually. Every binding fades. And when that day comes, when someone finds that tomb and sees the chains and the symbols and the warning carved in 6 languages, including English, that says, "Sealed by blood, never open," I hope they remember this story. Hope they understand that some doors were closed for good reason. Some monsters were bound because they couldn't be killed. And some sacrifices must be honored by not undoing what brave men died to accomplish. I'm 85 years old. I've lived a full life. Seen my children grow. Held my grandchildren. Experienced peace and prosperity that those 9 Marines who died in 1950 never got to know. I owe them everything. We all do. Because if that entity had escaped that mountain, if she'd made it out into the Korean winter, if she'd reached the refugee columns or the field hospitals or the towns full of civilians fleeing the war, the death toll would have been catastrophic. We stopped her. Sealed her. Made sure the only casualties were us. That was our mission. That was our sacrifice. And I'm proud of it. Proud of the men I served with. Proud of what we accomplished in that frozen hell. But I'm also afraid. Because I'm old, and soon I'll be gone, and the tomb is still there. Still sealed. For now. And I wonder, in my nightmares, what happens when the last person who remembers is dead? When there's no one left who knows what's buried beneath those mountains? When the seal is just mysterious symbols and ancient warnings that modern people dismiss as superstition? What happens then? I don't know. I hope I never find out. I hope the Chinese captain's family keeps their promise for another 1,000 years. I hope the North Koreans leave that region alone. I hope the tomb stays buried under rock and ice in time. But hope isn't enough. It wasn't enough for those Korean shamans. It wasn't enough for the Japanese researchers. It wasn't enough for the 9 Marines who died. Hope doesn't seal tombs or bind entities or stop evil. Sacrifice does. Knowledge does. Vigilance does. So I'm asking you, whoever's watching this, whoever's reading this testimony years from now, remember. Remember what happened in the Chosin Mountains in December 1950. Remember that 15 Marines went into that mountain and only 6 came out. Remember that those 6 sealed something that needed sealing. And remember that sealed isn't destroyed. Contained isn't eliminated. Bound isn't killed. The entity is still there. Still waiting. Still patient. And the only thing keeping her trapped is iron chains, blood magic, Chinese explosives, and the memory of what happens when seals are broken. Keep the memory alive. Keep the tomb sealed. Honor the sacrifice of the men who died to protect you from something you'll hopefully never have to face. This is Staff Sergeant Robert Mitchell Hayes, United States Marine Corps, signing off. Semper Fidelis. Always faithful. To the end and beyond.